So this story is going to take a minute. This is my story of Curtis Bowman here at the Buffalo River. When I first saw Curtis, he was standing by the river. He was standing by what was apparent to have been a swamped canoe. He was wet from hat to foot. And he was not wanting to continue going down river in a canoe when his party, there just weren't enough paddles to go around. So I showed him on my downloaded map on my phone. It would have been about 2 miles walk on what was known as the Old River Trail. He'd have to cross the water 4 times, the river, but it would take him back to the actual takeout point, and his family would be there waiting because they had their paddles and they were going to continue on with the canoes. Well, the trail, the Old River Trail, was a disaster through that area, and he got turned around and ended up right back at my camp. An hour later, maybe. And it was an emergency, so I did not punch the SOS button on my inReach. But I did start texting my wife. Texted her to get a hold of the Park Service, and they didn't seem to care. I texted her back and forth, trying to get a hold of his family, who has been obviously worried and waiting. So Curtis and I were kind of given the instructions then by the park rangers through my wife that as long as Curtis was with me, well, that was good enough for them, and suggested that since I had an app and a downloaded map with a GPS, they suggested that I help him out. By the time he'd returned to my camp, he was dry, but it was not going to stay warm, and he was going to get wet 4 more times, so I started escorting him. And without the aid of my GPS, I'd have never found the way to the first river crossing. But we did, and we crossed it. It was about knee deep, slippery rocks, maybe 60 yards wide. By this time, Curtis was tired. He was hungry. He'd been eating some snacks. But he was starting to lose a lot of control of his feet. His motor skills were declining. So when we reached the second crossing, and it was a deep one, we'd lost all light. I had my headlamp, but I had left all my camp set up. And we started across that crossing. Curtis kept falling. There was no way. So we decided to go back towards my camp, the best thing to do, where I could at least keep him warm. But we had just gone down like a 10-foot sandy bank, steep. It took us probably 10 minutes or more to get him back up that bank. I knew that he was not going to make it across that river that we'd already crossed one time. So I had him stay where he was. I marked his location on my GPS. And I hiked back to my camp, and I tore down the camp, packed it up, and met him back where he was. I don't think it took an hour probably, but without my GPS, I'd have never found my camp, and I'd have never found my way back to him. It was black and dark. So, when I got back to him, we made a fire. We got his socks dried out. I had almost everything that I would pack with me for a much colder trip in my pack. Plus, it turned out I had some extra food. So, I normally hike with one puffy jacket on and sleep with the other one if I need to. So I gave him one puffy jacket and some gloves to help warm him up. We got his socks dried out a little bit by the fire. And I laid out, I laid out my ground cloth. We laid down side by side, and we covered up with my unzipped sleeping bag. Two strangers. One needs help. The other one has what he needs to give the help. So, in communicating with my wife in the park, and I knew there was nobody coming in the morning. They didn't seem to care. So, we started walking. We crossed that first river. It was getting up almost half. Well, it was almost waist deep. It was fast. A lot of water moving. Curtis was still having trouble with his feet, finding his footing. Both of our feet were slipping on the slippery rocks. Second crossing we came to was so deep we didn't scout it out very far, but where we were supposed to cross, we would have had to swim in fast water. Fortunately, I say that, but I'm going to come back to this. A group of canoers had set up camp right there, not even knowing that was a trail. They ferried us across in their canoe. Now this trail is only 2 miles long. Cross another stream or river, again, same river, and get him safely to his family, who were only but barely informed all night of the situations that my wife was relaying to the Park Service. All they knew that he was with somebody and he was all right. And so here's the real part of this story. This today is Easter Sunday. The reason I'm here is because our company was doing some work in Oklahoma. We had half a day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. were to drive back on Monday for another week of work to Oklahoma. Now I'm from Indiana. So by the time you do that and you stop for fuel, you're looking at 11 hours easy, probably close to 11 and a half by the time you get home. And I decided I struggled because I think that this is probably the first year in my entire life that I was not in church on Easter Sunday. I'm in church most Sundays, but Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, I believe this is the first one. So I struggled even thinking I should probably come home. I should go to sunrise service or for Resurrection Sunday service, and me and my wife talked about it, and it didn't make sense to drive all that way just to come back next week. So I had my bag packed. Might as well plan a trip, so I did. Kind of last minute, kind of prepared, but my pack was packed for everything that I would need. I could have probably camped for 4 days, maybe 5 even. If the 5th day was a hike out, I had enough food. I had enough clothes for a very cold camp. Before I came, I laid my stuff on the hotel bed that I was staying in. I went through it. I thought I really need to get rid of some of these extra clothes, especially this. I don't need 2 puffy jackets. I should probably get rid of some of this food. I don't need that much food, it's just extra weight. But something told me, and this is what I'm getting back to, the way God works in our lives. So uncomfortable for me to miss that sunrise, that resurrection service. But yet, I had what Curtis needed. I don't know that he'd have made it through the night. He may have, but he had been cold. He was cold anyways when he came back to me. So, I don't know if God put me in this place or if he just used me when I was here. And I don't know if God parked those people on that beach with that canoe and their tent set up where the trail crossed to ferry us across that. I don't think we'd have made it across that. I don't know if God put those people there, but he sure did use them while they were there. I don't know why I didn't unpack food and clothes. I just kind of listened to my gut and went with it. And it's not a coincidence. And laying there in the middle of the night, we got woke up, both of Curtis and I, and he had a dog with him, by the way, and the dog was barking at some movement back in the woods. I don't know what it was, some kind of animal. We both woke up and we stopped and we're looking up at the stars. We've known each other for a few hours and we're friends. And we get to talking about God, and we get to talking about there are no coincidences. Things happen, and God will use things. And so that's the Curtis story. Curtis Bowman. I'll probably never see him again. I'm probably going to think about him quite a bit. I didn't want to help him. I didn't want to have to deal with somebody else, a stranger. I didn't want to have to share my water with a stranger. I didn't want to have to share my food with a stranger. But a stranger in need, it's the only right thing to do. So I'm no superhero and I'm no Superman, but I do know that God works in our lives. And really find that way where you can start communicating with God and listening. I didn't even know why I wasn't taking that heavier stuff out of my pack, but it worked out. So I don't know what you'll get from this story. If nothing else, it's just a kind of a little log for me to remember it later, because I just dropped him off to his family. I do believe my life has probably changed for a long time, and I hope that never ever has to happen again. But if it does, I hope that I do what's required of me. So I hope you can glean something out of that and apply it to something that makes sense.